This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 433 for Thursday, February 24th, 2022. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Alastair McFly is back. You can find him at Alastair McFly on all the social media that matters, and of course, Alastair McFly on Twitch, and co-host of Long Range Sensors, a Star Trek retrospective podcast. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me back. Always fun to be here.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day. I know we don't talk about weather as a rule, but it's just so nice to see the glowy ball of death in the sky.
I did not know. I genuinely did. I have been waiting for almost 2 weeks for blinds to be reinstalled in my apartment. Builders came, they changed all the windows, and they didn't put the blinds back, and they kept promising to do it. It's taken almost 2 weeks. So this is like the first time I've had blinds. So they are all shut throughout the house. So I honestly didn't know, but having builders stood outside your bedroom, your living room, and just staring in when you're in a basement apartment, it wasn't doing my anxiety any favors. I can tell you that.
No, I've had that opportunity to criticize my building manager when they were out. I believe what they were doing was they were repairing the grout on the brick outside the building. You've been here, so you know that some of my building is like got a brick outside, old school, kind of like a white beige brick sort of thing. And so they're doing the mortar, I guess. And I'm on the third floor. So when you walk, down the hallway and you see a head outside of your window, you're just like, Spider-Man? No. Like what? Like, why is there a head? And now part of it is this, like, I mean, I have blinds in my bedroom. I don't have anything up in the spare bedroom because it's mostly storage. So it's like, I'm not going to bother to put curtains or anything up there. I do have curtains in the main room as well. But that also has a balcony, like, kind of in the way. So like someone is not going to be pressed right up against the window in the main room. But yeah, like it's really unnerving in an apartment when they don't inform you, when, and you didn't say that. I mean, you didn't say that you didn't know they were coming, but like I was not aware that they would be cleaning the back of the building, the mortar on the bricks. And so I was very surprised to have someone staring in the window. My brain flipped to like, well, that was weird. I've got some thoughts about that. And then my brain went to like, I hope any of the women that live in this building are at least aware that there's workmen like climbing ladders and doing stuff. Now he wasn't looking in, like he was doing his job, but still like that's not a comfortable situation. And really all it takes is just like, let people know, shut your blinds today, that's all that needs to happen. But apparently it didn't.
I would have liked to have had the opportunity, is all I can say.
Yeah. So you have blinds now, but they are shut.
I have blinds now, yeah. They no longer fit the window, so they're actually way too in front of where the window is. So although the builders have sucked at this, the building manager has been very kind to say that they're going to actually get some new blinds for me that actually fit and they'll be installed properly. So this is still a temporary measure, but I get on well with my building manager, so I have that going for me, which is good.
I don't have the best relationship because they're just a larger company, and I don't think they give two shits. I'm in an older building. I'm sure that this building is probably a money pit for them, and so they put all their money into the new buildings that they're building, and they don't keep this one up as they should. This is at least a 50-year-old building.
I just lucked out really on my relationship with my building manager because they hated the guy that was in here before me. He wasn't paying rent. He left the place in absolute state. And I was kind of their savior that that was able to get him to get out and for me to take over. So we started on very good terms.
You didn't have to raise the bar very high to be a liked tenant. See, my beef is that I make requests. I let them know that things are not working or I want things done properly. And then it doesn't happen. They just send whoever the whoever, and I don't want to belittle anybody that works in trades. I'm sure a lot of you are very skilled and very diligent with what you do. But the schmucks that they hire to do the work in this building cut corners left, right, and center. And so I'm just like, yeah, I want you to come back and fix the floor for the third time, because the people that you hire just are doing a shit job at it. And, I've got nails sticking out, or I've got stuff like that. That's just a problem. And like, I've just taken it upon myself to just fix stuff. Like, it's not worth the hassle to try and get in touch with the building manager. Like, if something is something that I can fix on my own without damaging anything, then, or making any like sweeping changes, then I just do it, because it's just not worth the hassle or the time to deal with them. And it's a really frustrating experience, because my beef is like, I'm on the other side of that spectrum. I'm not the new tenant. I've been here for 20 years, which sounds weird to say out loud. I never expected to be renting this apartment for that long. But as such, the chip on my shoulder is like, I have been a paying tenant of yours for 20 years. Like, do you want me to tally up how much money I've paid you over the last, 20 years? I really feel like, given the other problems that they do have with tenants, that they should, the one time, when I say like, hey, this is a problem, could you really take care of this? You'd think that they would do it. You'd think that they would say, hey, this guy's been here a while. He's a good tenant. Like, he minds his own business, doesn't cause any trouble, pays his rent. Like, just do your job.
I'm sure that there are some, now this does not apply to yours or mine, I'm sure, but I'm sure that there are some landlords out there who just think, yeah, well, I've had somebody here for a while, but the great thing is, if they leave, I get somebody new who pays more.
Yes.
So sometimes retaining tenants isn't the most profitable method. And
I'm aware of that. And actually, and we won't get into it, the politics of it on the show, but like, there are some changes that will be happening in the province in the next probably year or two, as the state of emergency with COVID is lifted, where rent control is not a thing. And it's an uncomfortable position to be in as a renter. And there's a whole series of podcasts that we could do about rent and living affordability in Canada right now, but we won't get into it. But speaking of where we're living, I don't really have a lot of stuff that's new going on in my life, because I've been just working a lot. But you have been a busy bee.
I've been doing quite a few different things. The main thing being house hunting.
Nice, man.
I think I may have mentioned briefly that I was looking at that the last time I was on.
I think you kind of touched on, I think you were at the education phase. Like, you're just like, yes, this is a thing that I'm going to do. I now have to learn how to do it, I think is how it came about.
Yeah. And essentially to catch people up, I was involved in a car accident where I was hit by a vehicle crossing the road, and due to a legal settlement, I don't have enough to buy a house outright, but it's given me enough to start the process and to invest that money into getting a house. So obviously I still have to get a mortgage and things. So it's not going to be cheap by any stretch of the imagination, even with all this. But I am in a fortunate position where I'm able to afford to at least begin. Getting hit by a car, not the way that I would recommend doing this.
No,
this is not legal advice of any kind.
I know we can joke about it now, but no.
Yeah, it's not an experience that's worth it at all. Just to be clear. But yeah, the actual house hunting process, it's exciting. It's very, very interesting seeing how it all works, because this is completely new to me. I've never really had to do house hunting before. My realtor has actually just sent me a bunch of new properties this morning, so I've still got those to look forward to looking at after the show. It's also very confusing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's a lot to it. Trying to figure out the finances and how all the different taxes work, all the different bills, all the stuff that you have to pay to the province, and things is very, very complicated. And I come from the UK. Houses are built very differently there. So most houses just are heated with radiators, and there's usually a gas boiler. You'll tend to find that and the controls for it, usually in your kitchen.
I remember you sending me photos. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, they're usually out on display against the wall, or they'll be hidden in a cupboard. you'll just open it up and you'll get access to that. And yeah, that's kind of like, that's how we heat our house. But here there's heat pumps. You have stuff heated by oil or electricity. There's so many different styles and ways of doing things. So I'm not just kind of going like, oh, how many rooms do I need? I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do these houses even work? And each different type comes with its own pros and cons and costs and so on. So yeah, it's as fascinating as it is confusing.
The only step that I've taken in this direction to even contribute to the conversation was looking into how to get approved for a mortgage. So not getting one, but like looking at my financial status, and difficult. So my tip of my hat to you, it's difficult as an individual, like, not a couple or a partnership or anything like that. So that's hard. But for me, it's the debt to income ratio and how the credit score was calculated. And that to me was news. I knew just kind of like from my income over the years and years as an artist going like, well, I know I can't afford one, so I'm not even going to bother to look. But then as I got older and I'm starting to plan for the future, I thought, okay, well, now that I'm in a position where I can plan, I should know what to plan for. Like, what's my target? Like, what should I be aiming at? And so I had a meeting with a mortgage specialist. I think I'll probably go with a different mortgage specialist in the future, but they were the one that was a free meeting with my current bank. And having spoken with them, they went through the basics, and I know now where I have to be. And that was eye-opening. And I think probably it was the right time to ask, because it was basically, no, you're not in a position now where you can afford it, but like, here's the steps that you can take to get there. And when I looked at the steps, it's like, okay, that's doable. If I had asked 10 years ago, it would have been just like, nope. Just a great big no. And it would have been really discouraging, right? So at least when I asked, I was at a stage where like, okay, well, your gut reaction to this wasn't so far off. Like, you knew you probably couldn't, but you didn't know where you were in terms of how distance, how far away was this target. And it's not as far away as I thought. It's farther away than I'd like it to be. But that's just the we'll say the freelance, not everybody, but the general freelance plight is like, you don't have the same sort of financial stability that someone with a 9-to-5 would,
No, absolutely. Yeah. If you do need a mortgage broker, I can absolutely recommend one that was recommended to me.
No, I'm sure.
He helped me from his hospital bed.
What?
Yes. He was actually like, please ask me questions. I'm dying of boredom here.
Oh my God.
He was in for some cardiology tests of some sort, but no, he is fantastic. He's been able to break things down very simply for me, and cool. It was just great. Yeah. If
you don't mind me asking, you are a Canadian resident, but not yet a citizen, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Does that complicate the matter?
Not in the slightest. The only difference, literally, this is the only difference you get as a citizen versus permanent resident, is as a permanent resident, I am not allowed to hold a Canadian passport.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure if somebody hands me one, I can physically hold it. But
yes,
I mean,
you can't call it your passport.
Yes. And I can't vote. If I do, I get fined heavily, and I've been assured that there is not a single politician that is worth the amount that I would have to spend. So that's the only differences. Other than that, I have no limitations when it comes to the residency thing. The only other thing is that if I leave the country, I have to take this residency card with me, which can expire. So I do have to, like, I can stay in the country as much as I want because I'm permanent. But if I leave, I have to make sure that that is valid. Otherwise, they won't let me back in.
Right.
And that's when you have to renew every few years. So I don't even know if mine's expired yet or not.
While I didn't have a lot of new stuff personally this week, work-wise, had a really fun episode of the Spawn Chunks on Monday. We interviewed Sliced Lime, who is the tech lead for Java Minecraft at Mojang. I have been, I will say, online acquaintances with Sliced for a little while now. They tend to be streaming when I'm streaming, so I raid them quite often, and had a delightful conversation with them about some really technical stuff about Minecraft, about the process of making Minecraft behind the scenes. And we also spent a good chunk of the episode discussing the Deep Dark Snapshot, which is a new new thing coming in Minecraft 1.19. We're currently in 1.18. But 1.19 has got this deep dark and the warden and all this kind of stuff. And because Sliced Lime wasn't really heavily involved with developing that yet, it was all kind of new to him as well. So it was fun to have that conversation with someone from Mojang. So I highly encourage people to go check it out if you're a fan of this podcast and you like Minecraft, or if you know someone that likes Minecraft. They will more than likely enjoy the curtain being pulled back a little bit on like how they add new features to the game and the technical considerations and the huge undertaking that was 118 and all that kind of stuff. It was a really fun episode. I believe it's 181 is the number of the episode. It's the most recent one. It came out on Monday, so go check that out. But that's the nerdiest thing that I've been up to, really. Anything else going on in your neck of the woods?
I've been planning for a new hobby for the summer. Which is going to be repairing and refurbishing old Nintendo Game Boys.
So not just one?
No, multiple. I started out by watching a channel which I've seen a few times before, called Odd Tinkering on YouTube. Phenomenal channel. Also, if you love ASMR, it's a great series for that, because it's a guy who, he never shows his face, it's just his hands, and he does some excellent cinematography showing the things he's fixing. Sometimes it's computer stuff, sometimes it's old mechanical things, stuff that's generally rusted up to all hell and looks completely unrecoverable, and he somehow restores all these things. Everything is described through subtitles. And there was one that I was watching where he was repairing a Nintendo. It was one of the joystick. I think it was called the Advantage, the NES Advantage.
Yep, I remember that.
And and I was just amazed at how well he restored it. And it's like, you know what? I've always wanted to do things at a soldering component level, and trying to come up with something to do other than make the timer replica from sliders, which to me is like the holy grail of what I would want to build as a prop. That's just way too advanced for anything that I would be doing. But this was just like, oh, this is actually a way to get into that. And repairing something is going to be a lot easier than just trying to think of something to build and create from scratch. And I just started watching more and more of these videos and learning more about stuff that went wrong with Game Boys, different ways to fix them. And there's something quite satisfying about taking something that is a 30-year-old piece of technology, which is also very well documented as well over this time, and renewing it. And given that it's, then a little bit younger than me, I think, you kind of think, if something from 30-year-olds can be patched up, maybe somebody could patch me up too. Who knows?
How would you take the soldering? Do you think that would hurt a little bit? It's like someone's like, hey, I can fix you up, Alastair, no problem. I'll just connect this wire to you end up looking like Geordie LaForge or something from Star Trek.
That wouldn't be too bad, But yeah, I ended up kind of having to buy. You have to buy a lot of equipment to do all this. Right, so like I've had to get a soldering kit, I've had to get a special mat to protect everything, I've had to get a fume extractor so that I don't get lung cancer, important things. And going into a hobby where it's got this much of a cost up front, when you've not even tried it yet, I am taking a bit of a risk. But I've got myself a soldering practice kit. I was trying it the other day. I sent you some photos of it as well. And I'm really enjoying the feel of it. And I decided to get a practice kit so that I don't destroy my Game Boy, which I bought recently. My one that I had as a kid is since long gone. Mm-hmm. But I've got one that I got which was mostly working with just a little bit of things that aren't right with it. So like the display isn't great. It's a little bit dirty and discolored, and stuff like that. Contrast doesn't work quite so well. So I'm going to be fixing that up and making it as close to original as possible, but with a USB-C rechargeable battery for convenience sake.
Nice. I don't know what happened to mine. I had an NES, I had a Game Boy, I had an SNES. I don't know what we did with them. I'd imagine they probably got packed up into a box at some point when I moved, like as a teenager, because we moved house a couple times. And I think in high school, I wasn't using them, so they probably just stayed boxed up. But I don't remember selling them, or I mean the NES might just not work anymore.
Well, in a year's time, let me know, and
Yeah.
if it's not working, maybe I'll be able to patch that up for you.
We can figure that out.
Yeah.
Because I've often looked at those micro SNES things that they have for like $150 or something like that Canadian, and it's basically like a little set top thing that plays like 50 games or 20 games or something like that. But they would be all the games that I would be interested in: Mario Kart, Super Mario World, some Double Dragon, some Street Fighter, like just that kind of stuff. And I mean, I say that, and I can probably play a lot of those retro games on Xbox Game Pass at the same time too. But still, that would be, I don't know even where those are. There's a box in my closet that's labeled Joel's Train Set and Lego. And I know roughly what's in there Lego wise. There'd be a couple of pirate ships and stuff like that, which I think are missing pieces. So to go and build those on stream, which would be really cool. I know that I'd reach a point where like I'd probably be missing a piece, or I know one of the masts is bent. It was too close to the wood stove, and the heat from the wood stove like melted the mast over. So,
oh no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you can replace them. Like you can buy parts like that online for like,
yeah.
But still, like having old electronics, like there's a lot of stuff that I've had. Now I know where my old iPhones are, like the modern devices that I've had as an adult. They've either been taken to and properly recycled somewhere, or they're in a box waiting to be brought to recycling, having been wiped and restored and all that kind of stuff. But like, I find now, like some of my devices just last forever. Like I have a DVD player back when having a 5-disc carousel DVD player was a cool thing.
Oh wow! Yeah.
It still works. I just don't need it.
And that's the thing. Like having something like a Game Boy, like functionally, it's obviously not anywhere near as good as like a Switch, but the nostalgia that's tied around that is what's making this a lot more appealing than just kind of going, let's go for something that's more recent and repair that. I also have 3 more on the way. They were in a listing where there's 2 original Game Boys, and there's also a Game Boy Advance in there, and they were listed on eBay with the description unspecified issues, which is probably something I should put on like my dating app profile, maybe. But I have no idea what's wrong with them. So there's also going to be a lot of fun trying to figure out, like, is it that they don't turn on? Is it just that there's no sound or whatever? So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's definitely going to be my new hobby and time filler for my downtime during the summer.
Nice. Odd hobby to pick up during the summertime. You think it would have been more of a winter hobby?
So, well, I mean, it's kind of starting there, but it takes time to get these things to arrive,
right?
And things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm calling it a summer hobby. It's basically like that's when I'm really going to be kicking off properly with it. But then hopefully by the time next winter comes by, I'll be a lot more proficient with it. I'm going to be the ones that are coming, depending on the condition, I'm looking at upgrading them as well. So one of them, I want to put a backlight on the display. Another one, I actually want to replace it with a new IPS display. There's a whole bunch of mods you can do. And who knows, maybe at some point it'll be a case of, fixing up other people's or doing custom ones to order. There's already somebody at work who's got a Game Boy Color that doesn't work. And she was like, hey, if you're doing this, could you take a look at it?
That's cool.
Sure. Yeah. So it could be something fun where I'm a little bit more skilled by the time winter actually rolls around.
I think practical skills like that are things that I wish that I had. And a lot of the things that keep me from doing things like prop building or like cosplay stuff. One, I don't have a lot of space in the apartment for a workshop. Like I've got a studio, but I'm mostly a digital artist. Like there's not a lot of mess going on. And even when I was doing traditional, it's like pen and ink. So it's not like I'm painting or anything crazy. So the lack of a space to do like, foam, like glue gun stuff, like it gets messy. And also, like, I know that I would not just want to make like something out of foam. I would want to have like LEDs, and I'd want to have like lights and motors, and like I'd want to do some cool stuff, of which I know nothing. And I just think like I'm either going to have to learn how to do that myself or buy it, at which point it's less of a fun hobby because you're buying the components, rather than making them yourself. But I'll point people towards Punished Props on social media and on YouTube. old friend of mine, Bill Duran, that I met through podcasting. He is a prop maker professionally, along with his partner, and they do such cool stuff, and they make it very approachable. And I don't know. He had a background professionally in video, hence his YouTube channel, but I don't know if he had a professional background in any kind of like electronics training. I think he had to learn all that kind of stuff himself. So that kind of stuff is always, it's doable. It's absolutely doable. And you forget that you can get this kind of starter kit education, on your own. Like you don't have to have gone to school for like electronics to know how to do it, right?
I mean, it's only because of like the age of YouTube and stuff that I'm now able to do this. When I was a kid, I wanted to do this. It wasn't a course that was offered at my school. And so now it's a lot easier. Plus, getting things shipped globally, like I couldn't buy this stuff locally where I was as well. But one bit of advice that I'll pass on that I learned from watching Adam Savage and his Tested series on YouTube is because the price of entry for a lot of this stuff, whether you're doing, component stuff or if you're doing cosplay or whatever it is, and prop making, price of entry is really high when it comes to just the equipment. It's so cool seeing people go, oh, you can build a lightsaber for less than $10. Yes, but you're spending hundreds on the equipment in order to be able to do so.
Right.
He was saying the best advice that he could give was get cheap equipment. Get the cheapest you can find. Learn how to use it. Find out if you enjoy using it. And if that is something you wish to pursue, then buy the best tool of that type that you can afford. And it will last you for life. And that was his kind of advice. And so that's the approach I've taken with this. I've gotten very cheap soldering equipment, but I've got a range of things. And as time goes on, I can always upgrade to something a lot better, but I at least have the basics that I need just to get started. And I think if anybody's kind of going into any kind of prop making or if they want to do refurbishment of electronics or anything like that, it's just, I think that's just brilliant advice from Adam Savage, really.
I agree. I've done something similar with kitchen stuff. Like to cook. I'm not a professional cook. I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on chef's knives, but like I bought a cleaver recently, super cheap. All I wanted to do is if it's something that can stay sharp and hold a decent edge for long enough for me to like debone a chicken, then great. If that's something that I end up doing a lot of the time over the course of the year, I'll buy a nice cleaver. But if it's something that I use once a year, then like I'm not gonna spend a lot of money on it. And it's a good philosophy. And I've had that that conversation with young artists as well. Like, what pens do I buy? What paper do I use? Like the pens and paper you use are the stuff that you have accessible. Like, that's if they're not even doing digital stuff. And I guess right now that conversation goes like, what app do I download? Like what, do I spend the $80 a month on the Adobe Creative Suite? And I say, no. There are lots of apps that I see professional artists use that are under $20, for, tablets or for, Windows computers that have like touchscreens or like whatever it is that you're using to do your artwork with. Like you can buy apps that are way more affordable. Once they're not subscriptions, you can just get the one thing. And if you're at a level where like, and a lot of times these questions come from like late high school, early adulthood artists. Like if you're in a position where like, that's all you need to spend, that's awesome. That means that if you do anything professionally, then your business wise, your output is and your earnings are a lot higher than what you have to spend on equipment. Right. And like, why bother spending stuff on Adobe? I mean, I do because I need the suite for what I do, but with the video editing and podcast editing and stuff. But like for regular artwork, I don't think these days, right now, I would be using Photoshop.
I'm using one called Pixelmator.
Yep.
Which is a Mac only, but it is a fraction of the cost and it is so much nicer to use. I prefer it way over Photoshop. And even for people on a budget, there's even open source options like GIMP, which is free.
Yeah. And it had a bad rap at first, but it's fine now. Like it does what it does.
It's a very mature app. It's been around for a long time.
A long time. And especially if you're doing things like, for example, when I think of like the things that you and I have talked about in terms of graphics, you're creating like stream overlays or YouTube thumbnails or stuff like that. Like, or podcast artwork for long range sensors. Like you're not creating professional client, advertising media, you're doing stuff for yourself. You need to move some stuff around, crop it and export it as a certain file type like that kind of stuff. You don't need Photoshop for. I use Photoshop for that still. And I feel guilty about it because the graphic demands of my other media work are not the same as graphic demands of any kind of professional artwork that I do. And so I use, when the time comes, I'm glad that I have Photoshop. And a lot of it is just muscle memory, and it's a program I know how to use. And switching at this point is honestly more of an uphill battle than you'd expect. But then the rest of the time when I'm doing like artwork for this show, like it takes 10 minutes. Now, I don't think it takes 10 minutes because it's Photoshop. I think it takes 10 minutes because it's a simple thing to do. And I could do it in other programs for sure. So moving on into the email bag this week, we have an email from Alastair. No, not this one. What to watch next? Dear Joel and Alastair, I recently forked out the €8 for Netflix, and the first thing I did was watch the entirety of the Jurassic Park series for nostalgia. It was the first sci-fi film I watched that infected me with sci-fi-itis. Then I realized I don't know of anything else I wanted to watch, so I scrolled through and found The Hunger Games. 6 hours later, I had watched all 3 of them. They're amazing. I thought there was 4, but maybe they're counting the part 2 and part 3 of part 2, 1 and 2 of the last one as one film. Now I'm watching Spider-Man. However, I don't know what to watch after. My criteria are sci-fi / fantasy or action, PG-13, and I don't mind bloodshed, etc. Thanks and keep it up. Alastair. Yes, I know. That's what they put in there. And I'll point out to our listeners that can't see, this Alastair has ALI, whereas our Alastair is ALA in terms of the...
Yeah, I was looking at it. It's very clear when you're reading the email as to which one it is. But yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, which Spider-Man are you watching on Netflix? Because if you're watching like the old Tobey Maguire series, I'm going to say watch Spider-Man 1 and 2 and don't watch Spider-Man 3. You will just save yourself a lot of anger and a lot of confusion. I liked The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. I would recommend those. I think there's 2.
Yes.
So check those out as well. Second one, not the best, but the first one was great. So I would, and I think those would be important viewing if you're going to continue on and watch Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man No Way Home is not on Netflix, at least not yet. But that only just came out in December. It might even still be in theaters.
It is still in theaters.
Is it really?
It's still doing very well. Yeah.
Have you seen, this is a bit of an aside, have you seen the interview with Tom Holland where the interviewer is informing him that he is the second highest grossing movie in the US, I think second only to Avatar or something like that. And he is just like, what? Like, where is this movie in terms of stats? Like, he knew it was doing well, but when the stat came across the interview as like, you are one of the highest grossing films in America of all time, he was just like, that's pretty cool.
I have not seen that, but I imagine he's probably got the same expression on his face that I have.
Yeah, no, he was pretty thrilled.
But when I saw, because I was talking to a friend of mine, we usually go to the cinema together to watch a lot of these kind of films, and she wasn't able to because of COVID restrictions and stuff. And then finding out that it's still at the cinema on quite a big run still. Like, it's not dwindled in terms of the showings. They still have plenty of them. It's like, this thing must be doing phenomenally for it to still be holding up where it's at in the box office.
I'm gonna have to go see it. I've had a couple of spoilers, but people are being pretty good about it online. The people that I follow that are Marvel fans and talk about this kind of stuff are very good about saying like, okay, Spider-Man spoilers in 3, 2, and I'm like, click. gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen some images that just don't give you the warning. So I've seen a couple of things. I know what's
Yeah.
happening. Although I have to say, the images was like a behind the scenes thing. So it didn't have any of the, like it's a green screen shot. So like you really don't know what's going on. It's just you see people and you're like, oh, okay. I mean, I knew it was going to happen. But still, you see the people in the shot. So I'm going to have to try to go see it if I can.
Definitely. I saw it opening night and then I got it spoiled. Like the following day, there was the biggest scene as a thumbnail on YouTube on the front page. But it is probably one of the best Marvel films I've seen so far.
So I don't know how to do this without confusing you. So Alastair with an I, to send you down your path. I would continue watching the Spider-Man films. Keep on going with the 2 Marvel ones. You don't need to have seen the other Marvel movies. I would recommend the Marvel movies, but unfortunately the smattering of Marvel on Netflix is kind of hit or miss and definitely not in the right order. So you'd be better off to try to find them on Disney Plus if you don't already have access to that and watch them there. Chances are, if you're a sci-fi nerd, then you probably have seen them unless you've been living under a rock for the last 15 years. But I would be embarrassed if I didn't let you know that Star Trek: The Next Generation should be on Netflix in the UK. I believe that's where it is, because that's where it is in Canada. I can watch, or do I have that backwards, Alistair?
No. Netflix do have Star Trek basically outside of the US.
Yes, US is Paramount, right? That's the
they have everything up until I believe Enterprise. They might still have Discovery. I'm not sure. In Canada, this is, but all the new stuff is otherwise on Crave and the Sci-Fi channel that they have.
The reason why I bring that up is because even though the UK and Canada and Netflix are going to have some differences, we're going to have a lot more similarities than the UK is going to have with the US as far as what's available.
This is also €8, and euros aren't used in the UK, so I'm not sure which region this Alastair is from.
I guess I should say.
Any recommendations we make, it could vary depending on what territory you're actually in.
Right, and so a lot of my recommendations are actually Netflix properties, so they're going to be there. Like that's an international certainty. I actually forgot to look up the rating for this, but Stranger Things was the first thing that came to mind. Great sci-fi. It's a sci-fi horror, sci-fi thriller, but I would say check out Stranger Things, the series. So again, these are things that are going to last longer than just a 2-hour film. To get into some of the more safe stuff, the stuff that would be PG-13 or better in terms of a nicer rating, The Dragon Prince is an excellent series. Avatar: The Last Airbender is on there. The Legend of Korra is on there. The Dragon Prince is made by one of the showrunners from Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. So if you like The Dragon Prince, then you'd like those other shows. Troll Hunters is a series that we've talked about on this show a number of times. Shadow and Bone is something that I'm watching periodically. I'm not like gripped by it, but it's good. It's a high production value. And that's a fantasy show that's got like magic and like, it's not anything that you've seen. It's not like trolls and elves and stuff like that. It's completely different. That's TV 14 as far as the rating goes. Arcane is an excellent miniseries. Wonderful animation, high stakes drama, kind of a trauma kind of warning in terms of what happens in some of the characters. So it is a bit older. I would say 16 or older. You'd want to watch that if that's a consideration. And you don't mind bloodshed. This is rated TVMA, so take this recommendation with a grain of salt. But The Witcher, season 1 was hard to follow, but still very well made. And season 2 was more linear, and I think good. So highly recommend. I just don't know if that's outside of what you would consider, your cutoff in terms of content. And these are things that are on my list, but I have not watched yet. I've heard that they're good. The Mitchells versus the Machines is a animated film that is nominated for Best Animated Picture this year at the Oscars. And I'm hearing lots of good things about it on social media. I just haven't watched it yet. Wu Assassins, I've heard is good, a little corny, but apparently that's a fun fantasy series. And Ragnarok, I don't remember who on this show talked about it, but somebody did. And Ragnarok is like a think like not think like Smallville, like that kind of a thing, but it's based around Thor. So it's like this kid in I think Norway, that's going through life, but he's like reincarnated Thor, and he's like 16 or 17 or something like that. I don't remember the exact premise, but you kind of get the idea from the poster. It's like, very attractive young man with lightning behind him sort of deal. But I've heard it's good. I've heard good things, and I'm pretty sure if we looked it up, you could find it on this show at least being mentioned it once. This email came in just before we hit record, so that's why I'm kind of squeezing all this in. But that's enough to get you started from me. Alastair, what would you recommend for Alastair with an I?
Well, before I do, I just want to say, like, Jurassic Park as a starting point for all of this, fantastic. That has probably been the biggest highlight of my cinema going experience as a kid. As a little shameless self-plug, if you go to alastairmcfly.com and go to writing, I actually have what that experience was like and just how cinema was different back then for anybody who's interested. But in terms of recommendations for things, one that I believe we'll end up talking to in a little bit is Travelers. That's one that I just recently picked up. Stargate, if it's still available in your region, Stargate has been leaving Netflix in a few places just because it's now been bought by Amazon. It's getting a little bit harder to get hold of, but phenomenal franchise, so highly, highly recommend that one. Lost in Space is a Netflix original that I really actually quite like. It was a very interesting reboot and take on things. I wouldn't say an amazing show, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for exactly what it was. 3 seasons, and I think that it didn't really need to be any more than that. So I thought that was good. A British import that's kind of all over Netflix now, obviously Black Mirror. Very, very dark series, but some phenomenal episodes on there.
What's the rating on Black Mirror?
That one, that's a good point. That I'm not sure.
It's TVMA, just kind of heads up.
Oh, it is TVMA. Yeah, I mean that does not surprise me. It is certainly not a child series. And then there was the animated series Love, Death and Robots, which I think I only saw the first. I think there's 2 seasons out now, if I'm mistaken.
Yes, there is. I haven't finished the second series, but that's also TVMA. Not that every short in the anthology is really mature, but some of them are really mature. Yeah. Kind of with Black Mirror and Love, Death and Robots, even though it's animated for Love, Death and Robots, I'd proceed with caution on that one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit out of the loop as to what's still on Netflix. I've mentioned I'm not going to go into detail, but not all that keen on the platform myself. But so I'm trying to remember what ones I've seen that I did enjoy. But given my podcast, I think I would be remiss if I didn't say all of Star Trek. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it, please do that.
And when you do, especially if you haven't seen them before, you have a companion show that you can listen to in long range sensors.
That's it. That's great.
Well, I'll kick off what we've been watching in detail in the main chat. This is a Disney Plus series that I have mentioned on the show before. I finally got around to finishing Star Wars: The Bad Batch. So not on Netflix, but for those of you that do have Disney Plus, I have swung around on The Bad Batch. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's worth watching the season in its entirety. I really enjoyed, especially the finale of the season 1, the last 3 episodes. Every once in a while with these animated series, they did it with some of the episodes in season 7 of the Clone Wars. They've done it with certain episodes of Rebels where, spoiler, Vader shows up. In this particular series, they kick this off with Order 66 happening. And you see the effects of that within the ranks of the clone troopers. And the Bad Batch are these genetically, I think they were like, they were genetically manipulated, but they were basically like mistakes. They were clones that didn't come out quite right, But then one of the Kaminoans recognized that that diversity had strength in it, and they were augmented to like enhance those kind of like weird traits that they had. And it looks kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Like you got the big guy who's all muscle, not a lot of brains. You've got the nerdy guy with the glasses. They call them goggles, I think. And so you have all these archetypes. You get the leader who's hunter, and he's like a tracker. He's got good leadership skills and stuff. And then one of the clones from the Clone Wars, they actually rescued, and he becomes one of the Bad Batch because he's been manipulated and stuff by bad guys and stuff. So like physically, he's missing an arm, so he's got like a droid piece on him and things like that. Anyway, the timeline that the Bad Batch takes place is what I find so interesting about it. The character drive for the story is that Omega is a young female clone, and she's only 10 or 12. And she's essentially a sister to all of the clone troopers, which I think is a really interesting premise, which means that she's related to Boba Fett in terms of genetics, right? It would be as if Boba Fett had a daughter clone instead of a son clone. Sorry,
so
Jango Fett, not Boba Fett.
So is this them just kind of altering DNA to get a female version?
I guess so. Yeah, that's they don't go into the science of it, but essentially she's the one clone, and she wasn't aged up, so she came out as I think an infant, and so technically,
so like Boba Fett in that.
Yeah, yes, yeah, like Boba Fett, but a clone of Jango, like Boba Fett, but then not like the clone troopers in that they were cloned and like came out as adults. And what's really interesting is that she technically is older than the Bad Batch in terms of how long she's been alive, right? Despite that they're all grown men. And
yeah.
Anyway, she ends up being like a stowaway with them on their missions. They end up being kind of like surrogate family for her. And because this is all happening at the time that the Empire is rising as the Republic is falling, I don't really understand the political timeline, because I thought that Sidious dissolved the Senate and the Republic just kind of went away, but it's not as cut and dry as that in this series. But there's lots of really cool Easter eggs for people that watch the Clone Wars. There are really cool moments for people that are parents, because like you've got these 5, super troopers that end up being different aspects of a father. Like she gets different kind of father or older brother vibes from all of these people. And she's quite capable too. She's not a damsel in distress, which is a great theme. I love that that's not always default now for female characters. So she's a strong young kid, which is great. The only thing that I would say about mid-season, they get into a series of episodes where they're running contracts for, I call her the Lizard Lady because I can never remember her name. She's voiced by Rhea Perlman from Cheers. Sid is the name of the character. And that has kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. Like, you got to do this job because I told you to, because I've got leverage on you, because I know where you live. Like it's all very smarmy, and she's not a bad person, but she's kind of like the criminal underbelly mother of the situation. And so it's kind of predictable, which is what I didn't like about it. Then in the final 3 episodes, and so spoiler warning, I'll try not to just drop too much info, but it's hard to talk about without really removing some of the cool moments from people's experience. But the final 3 episodes, Hunter gets kidnapped by Crosshair, who is one of their crew who did not defect. He decided that he liked the Empire and he wanted to be part of the Empire, not the Republic. And so he's a bad guy. And he's being brought back to the Empire, which is slowly becoming more and more powerful. And there's some absolutely incredible, all I can say is giant air quotes, Star Wars moments in the last 3 episodes where like they find a giant, secret base. They have to have like starship battles. There's on the ground battles. There's no lightsabers because there's no Jedi in this, but they do all kinds of really cool stuff. The stakes are high because of where it is in the timeline. You don't know if these characters survive or not, so it's pretty cool in that way. And there are some epic moments of like star cruisers bombarding cities, dark empire, like, you know, fire at will commander, like just stuff like that just kind of makes your goosebumps kind of tingle when you're watching Star Wars. So again, really slow middle to the series. The stuff with Sid, you kind of have to roll your eyes and like, all right, well, I guess I'm along for this ride. Some of the characters are pretty soft, but the beginning and the end of the series were really, really well done. And it definitely has your spaceship quota throughout the series. Like you get to see a lot of cool ships and technology, which is great.
Like new designs or
just new designs or augments on certain designs or just the amount of things that you like, flybys and the pacing. Like that's something that I think they get a lot in the cartoons, is that when they move to a different location, they start off with some slow music and then like the silent, there's no dialogue. It's just the sound of a ship coming out of hyperspace and descending to the planet, and then the ship descending through the atmosphere and landing on the platform. And it's not until like the gangplank is down and the characters are out that there's any speaking. And I like that about Star Wars. Like I like that pace about just like, look at the ship, look at this planet, look at this environment, you know, look at how you get scale, like look at the size of this ship compared to the size of this ocean. And so you get the scale of things without someone saying over comms, wow, that's a really big ocean, which is painful as an adult watching that kind of stuff. So they do a lot of visual communication in scene setup, which I think I like. But yeah, I would recommend it. I am happy to say that I was wrong. I think I did some snap judgment about it. It's a terrible name. I'll throw that out there. I'll agree with myself back when I first talked about it. The Bad Batch is a dumb name. What they should have called it is the Omega Squad, because Omega is the name of the 12-year-old kid. Right. And even though she's not the leader, she's the reason why they do anything, right? Protecting her is like the reason why they do anything. And so the Omega Squad is a way cooler name and would have had me clicking on it going like, ooh, what's this? Not the Bad Batch. Like it screams like after school special, like you're the weird kids. It's okay to be weird. Like just, it's not the best. But everything else within it is good.
I struggle. I definitely watched the first episode. I think I may have bailed partway through the second.
Yeah.
I was just struggling to get into it. Now, you've mentioned that there was some callbacks to like the Clone Wars. I still haven't even gotten around to watching that. It is something that I want to do, especially as that's the one that they brought back recently.
So yeah, Clone Wars had a season 7, which aired like 5 or 6 years after season 6 and was a Disney Plus only. And in Clone Wars season 7, the first 4 episodes are the origin story of the Bad Batch.
Right. So, because this is what I was going to ask is, would you say that Clone Wars is kind of required viewing? And that might even be why I had a tough time with it, because I felt like I was missing stuff.
I would say Clone Wars isn't required viewing. I would maybe go back and watch the first 4 episodes of season 7 of Clone Wars. And the reason I say that is because Clone Wars is season 7 of Clone Wars is very easily separated into the Bad Batch story and Ahsoka Tano. And the Bad Batch, I remember watching season 7 going like, why am I spending all of this time with these 4 new characters that I do not care about when what I want is season 7 of Ahsoka and Anakin? Like, I want to know what happens. And it turns out that they were using that to launch the show. Right. So you can still go back and watch season 7 of Clone Wars, the first few episodes, get what you need to know about the Bad Batch, and then not have to worry about, like, then come back and watch the rest of season 7 later. Season 7 is, or not season 7, but the Clone Wars is a hard to approach thing because it's an older show. It's aimed at a really young audience in the first few seasons. Think like first 2 seasons of Star Trek Next Generation compared to later seasons. And so The first two seasons are kind of things that you're going to want to have on the background. And then when you get into like season 3 and 4, when Ahsoka gets a little bit older, then it starts to be like, you'll notice yourself starting to sit down and watch, rather than just kind of going through the motions. It's also old model. So like, think like 22 half an hour animated shows in a season, which means that there's a lot of filler. It's not the Netflix 10, it's the network 25 or 22.
Right.
So it's hard that way. Like, here's an entire episode about R2D2. It's like, this is cute, but I really don't care. Like that kind of stuff is hard to watch.
Well, maybe it's worth putting in the background whilst I'm fixing my Game Boys, perhaps.
It would probably be a pretty good series to have on in the background when you're doing something like that. So what have you been watching, my friend?
One show that I've been watching, which is not new, but is new to me, which I just mentioned previously, was Travelers. This is a show by Brad Wright, who is the co-creator of Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis and Stargate Universe. He also made the rebooted Outer Limits series back in the 90s. And he has a podcast called The Companion, which I listen to partly because we're all hoping for more information about the Stargate series that he's hoping to make, that was a little bit up in the air because Amazon suddenly bought MGM in the middle of him trying to sort out a deal for it. And he's constantly kind of going like, if you haven't seen Travelers, you need to see it. And I finally managed to find the time to sit down, and my God, he was right. I think it is a fantastic show. For those who don't know, it's essentially a time travel show with some body swapping, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories all kind of mixed in. And it's really a fantastic premise. What happens is that you've got these time travelers who are from a few centuries in the future, and they've managed to get the technology to implant their consciousness into another body, and then eventually be able to do that through time as well. And what they do is they find people who were just about to die, and they overwrite that person. And so that's kind of how they're going back. So they're not physically transferring themselves, they're just transferring their consciousness, but it does overwrite the original host. So that person is dead, but they were about to die anyway. So the series lead, which is Eric McCormack, he plays Traveler 3468, and he goes into the host of an FBI agent called Grant McLaren, and he was about to fall down an elevator shaft. So he's now taken over his life and is now having to live the life of Grant. So his wife is no longer going to be a widow, and so on. But there's a whole bunch of them that have come back as a team. And I'm not going to spoil too much in terms of what happens, but some of the information that they have in the future is not accurate. One of the hosts, they believed, died from a drug overdose the very first time that he tried drugs. Turns out that wasn't actually right. The historical records are wrong, and he has an addiction. And so the traveler who ends up inhabiting his body also inherits the drug addiction as well. So you see him suddenly struggling with withdrawal and stuff. But it's a phenomenal show whilst they're trying to figure out there's this giant cataclysm that's going to happen, and they're all trying to make little changes in the past to do this whilst following all sorts of different protocols. Like the mission always comes first is their number one protocol, which is it's kind of like the Prime Directive,
right? Okay,
for Star Trek. And then you've got ones like Protocol 5, which is when there's no mission that they're on, they have to just continue their hosts' lives exactly as it is. But people start getting suspicious, and so there's a whole load of stuff that's going on, and it's great. There's some brilliant side characters as well, and I think probably one of the breakout ones for me was a character called David. So he's not a host, he's not one of the travelers, but he is just one of the kindest, most generous people that you've probably ever seen on television. He is a social worker. He goes out helping the homeless. And with all of the I would say the moral questioning you might have behind some of the characters and the motivations from the director in the future, who is this person who's who's organizing like what changes need to be made to bring about a good future. He is just like this beaming, shining beacon of hope in the entire thing, and it's always just very uplifting to see his character on there. And for anyone who is a Stargate fan, Amanda Tapping, who played Samantha Carter, she is both in this and she directs, and she is a fantastic director. That's kind of what she's moved on from acting. Acting's still something she does from time to time, but directing's kind of her main gig now. So it's great seeing her. There's a few other Stargate actors who kind of come in because of Brad Wright's involvement.
Cool.
And yeah, and there's only 3 seasons. It got cancelled. And I think that's why I didn't watch it. As much as a time travel fan that I am, I was put off a little bit when I found out that it had been cancelled. It was originally a Showtime show for the first 2 seasons. Showtime cancelled it. Netflix bought it and made a 3rd season, but then they cancelled it as well. And I'm just like, so is there any point in me going in and seeing this? Brad Wright has done to Travelers as he did to Stargate Universe. So Stargate Universe cancelled after 2 seasons. He had a feeling it might be. So the way he ends Stargate Universe is, here's an actual ending, but it's open-ended. So it could be picked up later if we wanted to, if the option is there. It's the same with this. You actually get a surprising closure. I think he must have gotten wind or had a feeling that this could be it. And so you do get a satisfying end with a very open ending, in the same way that you can have a standalone movie that has an open ending. It's like, ooh, what could happen next? Could it open up a sequel? So it has that. So anybody who's kind of worried of it just kind of being left on a dangling thread, I would say no, you actually get closure for a lot of stuff, which I'm really glad about. I didn't know that going in. I decided, like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to risk it. But for anybody who that does bring hesitation about, I would say it's fine in that regard.
Sometimes when something has a finite end, it's almost easier to get into. Now, on the flip side, if you're halfway through season 1 of like Cowboy Bebop on Netflix and you know it's canceled and you don't like it, well, just bail. Like, why bother? Right? That's something Brockett mentioned last week. But when it comes to approaching a new series, like I look at something like, I don't know, Supernatural. I know it's not my show. Like I've heard enough about it. Like, whatever. I've seen a couple of episodes way back when it was on the air. But I look at 14 seasons and I go, no, there's just no way. I'm just not interested in watching something for that long. And I feel like I find miniseries or shorter seasons a lot more approachable. I enjoy the feeling of getting into something where it's 8 to 10 episodes long. You're starting to like it and you're starting to watch 2 episodes a day. And then you go, oh, whoa, wow, I need to pace myself. There's only 4 left. I need to, because I don't know how long it's going to be before Netflix or whoever the streaming service provider is that usually, because usually this happens with the properties that are like Prime originals or Netflix originals or whatever. You don't know how long it's going to be before the next season, if there's going to be a next season. So I tend to pace myself as best I can, but I find it daunting when there's more than 3 seasons. I kind of go, oh, I don't know. But I find that something that has only 3 seasons, I would probably look to see whether it was like canceled prematurely or whether it was just like, this was just meant to be a 3-season arc. I hope more projects are like that. I'd rather have a complete 3 seasons with an ending rather than, we might be canceled, but we'd do this forever if we could. Like I prefer like a finite story.
Yeah, and this one was like 12 episodes for the first 2 seasons, and then season 3 was just 10 episodes, because Netflix, obviously, they like their 10 as well. But yeah, it was, and I found it very binge watching. I mean, you're saying like you find yourself watching 2 episodes. I was finding myself watching many more than that in a row. I was actually surprised by how much I was getting invested in this. I just think that the characters and the pacing is really good in it.
Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you are getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server and other benefits depending on where you're supporting. Things like bonus episodes and new stuff coming. I've got some work to do on the Patreon page, so expect some changes there. Patron count is at 26. Check that this morning. That's up 1 from last week. Our goal each month is to have at least one more person than the month before. We've met that, but hey, there's always room for more. If you would like to be patron number 27, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Now, I say that, and the Citadel Cafe Discord is actually shared with my own personal Discord. There are over 100 members of the Discord, so it's not this little teeny place with 24 people or 27 people hanging out. But it's a shared nerdy space. And I'm biased, but it's one of the nicest places on the internet. And I really appreciate it. This show has been a long run passion project. And for anybody that's come on new in the last month, you should have received a personal message from me. But if you haven't seen it yet, then thank you ever so much. It's really, really cool to have the Citadel Cafe growing in support. It means that we can do a lot more with the show. Surprising no one, my pick this week is Lego related. Lego Horizon Forbidden West tall neck set. It is slated to be released in May this year, retailing for $80 US, which is probably closer to $100 in Canada. And it is 1,222 pieces, 34 centimeters or 13.5 inches tall, 23 centimeters or 9 inches wide, and 17 centimeters or 16.5 inches deep. Nearly or a little over a foot tall is actually pretty tall for this kind of a set. I own Horizon Zero Dawn, the first game in the series, on PC, but I've not yet played it. I picked it up on a Steam sale over Christmas. I still want this set, though. I'd imagine anybody that's a fan of the series or a fan of the brand new game that just came out for PlayStation or is coming out this week is just going bananas. Like, it is a really cool set. And for those that don't know, Horizon Forbidden West is the sequel in a post-apocalyptic, I want to say future world where, again, I don't know much because I haven't played the game, but animals essentially are robotic, or there are robotic animals around. And some of them look like dinosaurs. And this tall neck is what looks like kind of like a brontosaurus maybe, but then its head is like a giant satellite dish or something. It's really, really cool. And has a unique kind of vibe to it. And boy, did they do a good job from the trailer stuff that I've seen compared to the Lego model. Like, it's really close, closer than I would expect a Lego model to be for this kind of thing. But I imagine that any fans of the game are just like, this is just epically cool.
I'm not familiar with the series at all. I'm just having a look at the link that you've got in the show notes, and yeah, that is a very, very different design to even the stuff that you normally get from Lego.
Yeah, no, it's really well done. So, like, tip of the hat to the Lego designers that worked on it, and it's one of those things. Like, I haven't even played the game yet, and you'd recognize the property if you saw the main character. You'd like, yeah, I've seen that at an advertisement somewhere.
That's when the new trailers come out. Like, I've seen that, and it's like that character I have definitely seen in promo art before.
Yeah, I see a lot of cosplay. Like, I don't know her name, but the female protagonist in the game, I've seen a lot of women cosplayers do some epic looking cosplay and do that at different conventions. But that's it for me. It's another quick Lego pick. I might have to just create a whole section for Lego on the show.
Quite possibly. But hey, that'd be great.
What's your pick this week, my friend?
Mine's from a YouTube channel called Retro Recipes. It's a guy called Christian Simpson who is doing things that I would love to do if I had both the money and the skill. He deals with a lot of retro stuff. He deals with, he's even modded Arcade 1-Up cabinets. So he's got a Star Wars one that he made to be a fully enclosed sit-down cabinet like the original. And he's recently been releasing a few videos where he's been converting his Tesla into kit from Knight Rider. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of Knight Rider replica cars over the years, but he's kind of like, given that Tesla cars have the ability to drive themselves, how close to making it like Can I Make It. Not just adding just the scanner bar and things, but he even replaces the steering wheel with a gullwing steering wheel. I think it's how it's called, where basically it's not a full circle.
Yeah. Okay.
He's modding his. There's an app that I've used before. It's like a kit simulator for your phone, and he's got that so he can actually talk with it. He's putting speakers in, and he's doing all sorts, and basically just trying to see like how close he can make it. So there's a couple of videos that he's done there. Really quite interesting with just how far he's able to push this with it, really. But yeah, and he's a Christian Simpson is just a delight to watch every time. He's actually done some voiceover work for a lot of stuff. He's been involved in Star Wars and Marvel, and he often does a lot of the audio descriptions for a lot of stuff. So
cool.
He does things elsewhere as well. So you may have even heard his voice without even realizing it.
I can see that skill being easily translatable to doing YouTube videos as well. Like if they're a voiceover artist, they're probably really easy to listen to, right?
Oh, really, really, yeah. And he's British, but living in the US. And he often gets his family and his dogs involved. And he is a fan of puns. Every pun is intentional. It's great. So if you love puns, you will get right down. And he's always got little speech bubbles for his dog. So he'll be saying stuff and his dog's just basically providing commentary in the background, which is always quite an amusing addition to his videos too.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Alastair and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and you can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com and find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell friends about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. While you're out there, if you want to leave us a rating or a review on Spotify or on Apple iTunes, that goes a long way to get the podcast into the ear holes of new listeners. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. You can check out my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we interviewed Sliced Lime from Mojang this past week. It was a lot of fun. You can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media. And today I will point you towards twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where I'm streaming at least 3 times a week. Some of it is modded Minecraft, and the rest is the Citadel, where I'm doing a big medieval project in that server. Alastair is a member of that server. People can find you online where, my friend?
Everything that I'm doing, you can just find at alastairmcfly.com. And as we've already mentioned, I have my own podcast. It's a Star Trek retrospective series called Long Range Sensors. We offer a British perspective on growing up with the franchise, and each month we pick up an episode from the original series all the way up to Star Trek Enterprise to revisit. So if you fancy joining us at the final frontier, you can listen to the show and find out more over at longrangesensors.com.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick 2.